Hello. I know some of you are still connecting to audio. Welcome. I should have some like snazzy music in the background. Now I know what to do for next time. Hi, everyone.
The USC marching band song would be fun.
Yeah. See, these are really good ideas. I like them. Thank you for joining us on some of your lunch hours. We're going to get started in just a minute. If you want to turn your cameras on, you can, but there's no pressure. We're excited to have you here. Thank you for showing up on time. And I'm going to launch just because it's already just a minute after. Give me 1 second. So if you can see my screen in a second, it says loading on my end. Will you give me a thumbs up? Awesome. My name is Jenny Bowler. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a career advisor for USC's Career Center. This is mock interview night prep session with the talented, wonderful Jason Yoon, who's an alum. And we're so excited to have him here today. And we have 3 wonderful graduate student interns, Mia, Ella, and Emily, who are also with us and helping out today. So thank you all. Some of our great staff are probably somewhere in there. So I'm just going to jump in, and I know people are going to be, in and out, but if you leave yourselves on mute, that would be helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We do have a little bit of time at the end. If anyone can stay after for a few minutes, we might have time for some Q&A. So I'll give a brief intro to Career Center if any of you haven't been to Career Center or are curious about what else we offer. And then Jason's going to lead us through a lot of fun things about mock interviewing, things to expect, and an elevator pitch to help with the upcoming career fair on Thursday. I can't believe it's Thursday. We have 175 employers coming, and then a Q&A at the end. So a little bit about the Career Center. Our drop-ins are Monday through Friday, every day 1 to 4, in person or virtual. And it's a really great time to get your resume checked, your cover letter checked. If you have a quick question about, salary negotiation or something that is on your mind, if you're looking for a little more support around a job or internship search, or to review an offer and kind of go more in detail about anything, we do offer 30-minute career advising and mock interview appointments. Before we do this, I forgot I was going to do a short icebreaker. I'm very excited to share with you, but yeah, Ella, do you want to share? I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second just so we can go through that.
Yeah, of course. If everyone could just maybe put their name and major in the chat, and whether you've had a mock interview before, since today we're going to be talking about how to do an interview with an employer. Just go ahead and again send in the chat. I put what you need to put, your name, major, and whether or not you've had a mock interview before. That'd be great.
Thank you, Ella. Of course, my screen froze as I did this. Okay, it's better now. So let's see. We have, majors from across campus.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could use the raise hand function or in the chat, it'll be a little bit easier with so many students.
The problem is I can't use the chat to chat publicly. I can only privately chat each of you. There's not an option to chat in the public platform.
Okay, thank you so much. That's okay. We can see your messages. So thank you for telling us, Lynn. We appreciate that.
So far, I don't know if you guys are also getting the answers, but some are sending it to me and most of them are saying no so far. So no experience with the mock interviews yet.
I think everyone can see in the host.
Yeah, same on my side too. I'm getting mostly no's. So hopefully this session will be beneficial.
And tomorrow's event, hopefully all of you are signed up already. Okay, so we can go back into our session. Thank you, Ella, and everyone for answering and replying. Okay, so back into the Career Center. We have events and workshops We obviously have our career fair coming up on Thursday, which is super exciting. And our Trojan Talks, which is a really great chance to learn more about the employers who have a relationship with USC and are from different industries and are really there to share more about their industries and have you there to ask questions too. I'm sure some of you have been to them, but they're listed on our website on careers.usc.edu. The website's right here, or you can find it on Connect SC under the events tab. And this is just a little bit about our amazing grad interns. And I'll let them share a little bit more about themselves at the end if they want to stick around for questions. And if you ever have questions about their grad program, they're in the PASA program. So we're really, really grateful to have them with us. Thank you, Mia, Emily, and Ella again. Some of the example questions alumni might ask you tomorrow. I wanted to include this slide because a lot of you might be going tomorrow evening. It's 6 to 8 p.m. and we're going to use a platform called Brazen. So it's not going to be on Zoom. It would be helpful if you could register on Brazen. There's instructions that we're going to send out. Just make sure you check your email. And these are some of the example questions. Jason will be going through some other kinds of mock interview questions. These are things that we can go through with you in a mock interview session. So please feel free. We are here to help you and support you through anything career related. So this is what we do for a living, and I can't believe I get paid to do this. This is the best job I've ever had, and so I'm really excited to support all of you. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Jason, you can share yours. It's the same slide deck.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so nice to meet everyone. My name is Jason, and I know exactly how you're feeling right now because I went through it when I was at USC. I graduated class of 2010. I remember the career fair. I remember putting on a suit and tie and meeting a ton of different employers. I think my very first one was Angie, a hiring recruiter at Disney. So I know exactly what you're going through. A little bit about me. So I graduated 2010, Annenberg, fight on. I'm a very proud alum. And then after that, I started on my career. I spent 7 years in the media advertising industry in Los Angeles. So I kicked it off at Universal McCann on the digital media planning, buying, optimizing side. Then I went over to Dentsu Aegis. And most of the clients that we worked with was Sony Electronics, Sony Pictures Movies, Fox Broadcast, Fox Sports, etc. And then I also served on the advisory board for Think LA, which is a nonprofit organization to promote marketing, advertising in the Los Angeles community. After that, I went over to Amazon up in Seattle, was at Amazon for 4.5 years. And that's where I really dove into the STAR method and the whole interviewing candidates. I left Amazon a year ago in September to do something crazy, which was join a pre-revenue, pre-product seed stage startup called Own It. It's a tech startup. We raised 8 million seed. I'm part of the founding team. I specifically lead go-to-market strategy and partnerships. And it's truly a roller coaster ride. If anyone has questions in terms of big company experience versus startup, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to share that. The next piece here is Amazon. I highlight this slide because this is where I learned most about the STAR method and employed it. Throughout my entire career, I've interviewed hundreds of candidates. I've read thousands of resumes. 99% of them are not that great because it undersells the candidates. But after talking to those candidates, my most popular and frequent question was, why didn't you write that in your resume? Because what you verbally told me was so good. So that's when I started to dive deep into the STAR method. But some background on Amazon. I loved it there. Great career. Started off on the business development team for the consumer business. And then my last role there was leading program management for voice of the selling partner for the Amazon consumer business. On the side, I served as a Alexa accelerator and Techstars mentor, where I got to work with startups innovating in voice technology for Alexa devices. That's actually where I met my current co-founder and CEO of our company, Own It, because his last company went through Alexa Accelerator. I also served as a Amazon Fishbowl and Connected Amazon Fireside Chats moderator. I was able and fortunate enough to moderate many different authors, from Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit, to Ryan Holiday, who's a stoicism expert, to many others. You'll see some of the photos there. And then at the tail end, I also served as a Amazon Candid Chatter ambassador. This was having candid chats with potential employees at Amazon who wanted to know more about the culture, about the working lifestyle, etc. So a lot of experience there. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. We have a lot to get through. So using the STAR method. So you may be familiar with this, but I'll touch on this quickly. So the STAR method essentially is a structured format mostly used for behavioral-based interview questions, right? You get asked an open-ended question, and then a very effective and concise way to answer that is using STAR. Explain the situation, explain the task, quickly explain the action, the specific actions you took, and then you always want to end it with results. The outcome being data-driven metrics, and always benchmark, because numbers without benchmarks don't mean as much, right? So now the key piece here and the secret sauce is you can also employ the STAR method in your resume. And that's what most people don't realize. So I'm going to show you some live examples here. This is an example of a resume bullet point I see very often. It's vague, there are no metrics, and it's simply not that exciting or memorable for the interviewer or the person reading the resume, right? So how can you use the STAR method to up-level this? It could look something like this. And this is the real life example I had in a one-on-one chat with someone that I was reviewing the resume with. So you'll see here, the first piece is really the S in STAR. It's detailing the scope of your work, right? The number of customer support issues. The second piece is the action that you take. How did this person support those issues and resolve them? The third sentence is the actions, right? And then the results. It's data-driven, it's benchmarked, it gives the reader a very clear understanding of how this person performed. And then you also bookend it with something that shows what's next. For an interviewer, this is very intriguing because I'm like, because it tells me, oh, the person didn't just stop there. They're expanding on this. They're expanding the scope of work to influence more teams, influence more team members and more stakeholders. So this opens up a very interesting interview conversation and actually wants me to bring in this person to have a phone interview or in-person interview. So this is how you can up-level it. That's the STAR method. I want to quickly touch on things to expect during the interview because there may be some misconceptions I've heard from before. So number one, some people get flustered during the actual in-person interview when they're asked a lot of follow-up questions, right? But it's generally a very good sign because it shows curiosity and interest from the interviewer, and it shows a desire to dive deep on that experience. And the purpose of diving deep with a lot of follow-up questions from the interviewer side is really two things. Number one, they want to know more, and they want to make sure that what you're telling is what you did and not what someone else did. And the way you figure that out is hearing how detailed the person is. Do they know what dates they did it? Do they know the metrics behind it? Because in an interview, you're trying to understand what that person did versus the entire team because you're hiring the person, not the team, right? The second part is, and this is a secret weapon, is come into the interview with a list of recommendations to improve for that specific team that you're interviewing with, because that shows that you're thoughtful, that you've thought about their business problems and their products, and it shows your mental model on how you think about where they can go. And it'll tie back to why you're the right candidate, right? So even if you come back, how this could work at the end is when if the interviewer asks, oh, do you have any questions? You could say, oh, you could even pull out a piece of paper and say, oh, from the research I've done about this team and what I know, I've actually written down 3 ideas on how I think you can grow this product or make this feature 10x better. And that's always impressive. And sometimes the interviewer would want to hear it right then and there, or sometimes they'll ask you to take it away and review it later. And then the third thing is you always want to come prepared with questions because it shows that you are deeply interested and curious about the company and the position. So your next question on this call is, okay, well, what kind of questions do I ask? What are good questions? So here are some 5 example questions that you can have in your arsenal as back pocket, right? The first one's pretty simple. What's the most exciting project you've worked on recently? And the part of these questions is not only for the interviewer to know more about you, but it's also for you to get the answers from the interviewer so you know that this is the team and company you want to work with, right? So number one will tell you, you'll get to see their excitement on how they talk about a project, right? The second one is the relationships at work. Certain people want very transactional, other people want to work very closely in terms of team collaboration. So this will get you that answer. Number three is a data-driven question, right? You want to know what they see as success on their current team. Number four is a very interesting one, because you get to see how the interviewer responds to you. Because this is essentially asking what are their biggest challenges and how they're going to overcome it. And it also shows you how vocally self-critical the interviewer is. Because sometimes you may want to be on a team that is very vocally self-critical or a team that's not. And then the number five one is very interesting, right? Because this also nudges the interviewer to saying, look, I'm interested in this role. And I want to know if you hire me, how can I be successful right off the bat in the first 30, 60, 90 days? So that opens up another conversational aspect with you and the interviewer. Okay, so the mock interview. So how this is going to work is we have two questions. So the first one, Ella, I'm going to ask Ella this question. So I'm interviewing Ella. And then the next one after this, Emily is going to interview me. So you get to see how this works in real time, which will be kind of fun. So Ella, I will ask you this question. So we're in an interview loop. It's in person. We're in a conference room. So say, okay, hey, Ella, tell me about a time when you took on additional responsibility outside of your scope of work.
Yes, of course. Actually, this past summer, I was a resident advisor or assistant, an RA for the Boulevard Scholars Program, where I supervised 14 high school seniors, and just to support them during their 3-week residential program here at USC. Our main responsibility as an RA was to develop and facilitate workshops and activities, to foster and promote community among the 120 students from the program, and also to supervise the assigned students that we have. But while it was not required of us, we spent actually most of our free time getting to know our students to ensure that they just have a memorable and enjoyable experience in the program. For example, every night we would have floor meetings, and it will take only about 10 to 15 minutes to share the information, but we would actually spend the next hour or so all together just talking and just opening up that space for our students to get to know each other even further, see how their day went, or just play some games together. I was also a Boulevard Scholar when I was a high school senior, so the most memorable thing for me was making friends with the other residents or the other students, and to this day I'm still friends with the people that I've met from the program. And so now as an RA, I want to share that experience with them and honor that, so that they also have an enjoyable time at the program, because it's a really intensive program. They spend from 9 to 5, just doing ACT and SAT prep, and also like college application. So we just want to make their time at the program really enjoyable. We would also actually bring them to the sand volleyball courts and almost play like volleyball every night. And we also introduce and explore like nearby stores and restaurants at USC, because a lot of them were actually out-of-state students. So it's their first time in LA or their first time like flying away from home.
Great. Ella, how, you mentioned taking on this additional scope of work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can be hard to quantify the success of a program, especially when it's not as data driven, it's more human connection driven. How would you quantify the success of this program? Like what kind of grading would you give it, and why?
I think like what you said, it's hard to quantify something when it's mostly human experience, but just seeing the growth of the students from the beginning during move-in day and seeing how close they are at the end of the program is really rewarding as an RA, because it's from talking to them personally, like, oh, like I'm so grateful that you guys are RRAs because you make the experience so enjoyable. And at the very end, when we were sending the students off, they were like crying, hugging us, like, oh, I'm gonna miss this experience so much. And just seeing how the groups that they've made, they're like group hugging and like crying. So again, I can't really quantify it, but just being able to compare how they were during move-in day and seeing how they are in the end and how close they got. It's just super rewarding, and you could tell that they had gained so much from the program, not just from the college prep, but also just memorable like friendship that they're probably gonna have for the rest of, hopefully the rest of their lives.
Got it. Yeah, that extra connection is always a good way to gauge the outcome. Doing this extra work is not easy, and trying to foster a relationship is not easy. How did you decide what to do outside of the regular expectations? Like you mentioned volleyball and floor meetings, etc. How did you decide what to do?
Yeah, like what I mentioned earlier, I was also a Bovard Scholar when I was in high school, and that was one of the things that I really enjoyed from the program. And a lot of my co-RAs were also part of the Bovard Scholars program. So I think we all knew that, when we were scholars, this is what we enjoyed, and we wanted to share that experience with them. And just like knowing, just getting a lot of help from our supervisors and talking it with the other RAs, like, I'm not doing anything right now. Like, are you guys down to bring someone or some students to like insomnia cookies or like, get boba? And it's just finding common interests with each other, with the co-RAs, and also with the students to, just open up a space for them to get to know each other even further.
Got it. I could tell from you when you described this experience that it was a very positive experience. So this question might be difficult, but looking back at it, what would you have done differently? How would you improve things?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would really like to improve if I were to become an RA again is holding more like workshops and activities, because we were only required to do maybe about like 6 or 7 workshops that we had planned for like formally, and those were the activities that the students enjoyed the most. So if I had the chance to do this again, I would like to plan more formal workshops and activities with all of the students, because a lot of the free time or extra activities that we did, we couldn't bring a lot of students because of the head count. Like for me, I could only bring 8 students with me, but maybe I could only find another RA, so we could only bring maybe like 16 students, but maybe 24 students wanted to go with us. And it's like we're telling them, okay, like, I'm sorry, we can't really bring you guys. So again, I would maybe hold more formal, maybe excursion with the students, so that we can really honor everyone who wanted to attend.
Got it. And last question on this topic, last follow-up is, let's say if USC and 10 other universities across the country came to you and said, we liked what you're doing. Can you scale this to our entire network of students, high school students matched with college students, etc.? No resource limitation. How would you scale this to hundreds of thousands of students? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to put that into perspective, given that I only had a limited experience from the program, but just maybe researching and connecting with people who also are interested in the same type of work, outreach, or fostering community for low income first gen students who had experience in a similar program in the past. Then I would connect with them and start brainstorming ways on how we can expand this in different areas, not just at USC, but also in other universities that have the same values that as the Bovard Scholars Program. I think I would start there, but I know that the executive director for the program, she did extensive research before planning everything out. So if I could connect with her and see what steps she took to be where she's at now and where the program stands currently, I would maybe do an informational interview and then start from there.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, that's the end of our mock interview. Great job, Ella. Thanks for participating. It can be flustering, like with one example, the 3 to 5 follow-up questions to dive deep. But the more that Ella explained this program, the more I understood it and the more interesting it got. And then the follow-up questions turned into, okay, well, I want to know, how would Ella scale this and make it larger, right? To increase the scope of influence. So yeah, that was a fun conversation. Okay, let's get to our next one. Okay, Emily, you are interviewing me, so don't hold back.
Okay, just gonna go straight to the question. Can you tell me about a time when you had a challenging interaction with a customer?
Yeah, at Own It, my current company, so we launched our conversion lift technology beta in January of this year. So as the head of partnerships, my responsibility is really threefold, right? It's identifying our ideal customer profile, ICP. It's partnering with 3 e-commerce brands so that we could test quickly and learn, did our technology work within a span of 3 months? And then it's working with our head of customer success to hit a very specific gross merchandise value goal of 20,000 per brand, right? Because that's the number that we knew would definitively conclude if our technology worked. And then it would allow us to spin up a word of mouth flywheel, which would help us generate more business. So essentially in January, I signed a very large pet brand that met our ICP criteria. We're talking $100 average selling price, single hero SKU, omni-channel purchase options through Shopify and Amazon. The brand did 50 million annual revenue, and they spent over $15,000 in Facebook ads per week. So everything we wanted in a brand, they met. And then the brand aligned to launch a A/B test using our technology. And not only that, but they agreed to send it to 262,000 email subscribers, which is large, right? So what seemed to be a win actually turned out to be a huge disaster because when we onboarded the brand and then the brand deployed the email, which was the A/B test, so 50% of that going to the Own It tech, it drove to a 404 error message. So it was a horrible customer experience. Essentially, their customers clicked on the email and got taken to an error message. So even if they wanted to buy the product using our technology, we couldn't even let them, right? So as you can imagine, our entire team of 12 scrambled together. We called in our engineering team for all hands, and we dove deep into the root cause. It took us 90 minutes to identify the root cause was a UTM string error in which the brand added special characters to our URL, which caused the 404 error. But essentially, after we discovered that, I immediately called the brand, and it's specifically the CTO and VP of growth, so the key stakeholders at the brand company. I explained to them the root cause error. I explained to them the correction of error that we will make as a company moving forward, which was 2 parts. Number 1, we documented all UTM tracking limitations clearly and we'll send it to all brands moving forward ahead of time. And then number 2, we deployed a at least 12-hour live test review before anything went live to make sure that there are no bugs. But knowing that, we cost half of their audience to go to an error message, so that wasn't enough. So in addition to that, in order to save the relationship, what we aligned on was we would match a $5,000 Facebook ad spend that they chose. So we would essentially do a 50% or 100% match so that they can test our technology. So in the end, they agreed to test it, which we were thankful for them. And the results were really strong. The brand saw a 43% conversion uplift, exceeded their benchmarks by 2x. And then instead of hitting 20,000 in GMV, gross merchandise value, the brand hit 60,000. So it beat it by 3x. And then even though we had a bad first experience because of the performance of our tech, the brand eventually referred us to 2 other brands to use our technology. So that was an early indication of word of mouth flywheel.
Awesome. Thank you for your response. I just have a couple of follow-up questions. The first one is, you mentioned that your team scrambled when the error occurred. Can you talk more about the process and how you communicated with the engineering team within the 90 minutes?
Yeah, it was frantic because we're all virtual. I was the only one in Seattle at that time. So it started off with an immediate Slack saying, hey, did you get this email? I forwarded it to the entire team. Everyone clicked on it, confirmed 404 message. Then we jumped on a live Zoom or Teamflow, and then we root caused it. We first checked all the email click links, were all the URLs the ones that we sent. The string was. Then we checked our backend. Was AWS down? AWS was not down. And we went down that line from an engineering perspective. And then we found out on the URL that they added a few special characters. So that's how we identified it, but it took us a while. And then throughout that, we also had to make sure what percentage of the A/B test was affected. At first, we thought it might be 25% because we weren't sure what the error was. But once we found out the root cause, we knew it was 100%, which was hard to tell the customer or the brand in this case.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. Sorry, another question I have is you also mentioned that you offered to match a $5,000 Facebook ad spend using Own It technology. How did you and your team come to that resolution, and how did the customer respond to that offer?
Yeah, 5,000 for a pre-revenue startup is a lot of money, especially one that tries to embed the frugality principle. So we came up with that number because we backed it out into what a cost per click and cost per CPM would have been based on Facebook ad benchmarks. And then we knew that it would drive enough clicks and thus traffic to the brand's website to give us enough data to decide, did the conversion lift, was it high enough? Because it doesn't matter if you lift conversion 200%. If it's only from a base of 100, the data is meaningless. So in our case, we knew we needed to hit at least 10,000 visitors. And that's where we did the match. We did think, did we want to offer the full 10,000? But as a startup, we want to be frugal. So that's where we start off with a match first. But to be candid, if the brand pushed back, we had in our back pocket to offer them the full 10,000. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for clarifying. Thankfully, your team was able to save the customer relationship and even exceeded the benchmark. After the error, did your team implement a new process to possibly handle any future situations where this might come up again?
Yeah, what's critical is documenting in writing, especially in a virtual remote work setting, best practices and standard operating procedures, so SOPs. So we basically revamped our Notion docs to make it very clear what the internal steps and guidelines were in terms of onboarding and then pre-launching a brand, and then the external steps. Where we made a mistake was we didn't make it clear that a brand could not add XYZ special characters to our UTMs without breaking it, but we made that more clear. And then after that, that's relying on good intentions that the brand partner followed all those directions. But what we know is people are busy. So sometimes you might skip over a list of 20 instructions, right? So after that, once we get the live test link, we internally test it ourselves to make sure it's not breaking, and then that we're seeing the data flow through. So we're doing a double test.
Got it. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm going to fly through the rest of it so we have time for Q&A. So the last piece is you're getting ready for a career fair, and there's over 175 brands at this, or companies at this career fair. So there's a lot. So there's one thing to say, hey, my name is so-and-so, here's my resume. It's not as memorable. So what you want to do is you want to come in as a memorable candidate and one that's tailored to that brand, right? Ideally. So this is where the elevator pitch comes in. And this is my recommendation on what makes a memorable elevator pitch. You want to keep it short, you want to keep it specific to the company, and you want to keep it problem/solution driven. So how this framework could work is, I think the future of your company is B because of C, and I'm the right person to help lead this initiative because of XYZ, right? So to take it full circle back to the first company I met at the USC Career Fair back in the day, over 10 years ago, over a decade ago, was Disney. So I was thinking about this on how I would approach Disney, and I would say something along the lines of, hi, my name's Jason. I think the future of Disney is to build a direct-to-consumer business that ties in merchandising, Disney Plus content, movies, TV, theme parks, resorts, vacations, because that's where, when you look at lifetime value membership programs like an Amazon Prime, it's combining value, proprietary value that cannot be accessed otherwise. And that's where I see Disney's most valuable assets. And I believe I would be an excellent team member for this initiative because I built my own Shopify store and I grew it from $0 to $10,000 a quarter selling apparel. So I know what it takes to build a direct relationship with customers. So that's one example you can use. I'll give you another example because I think this could be quite helpful. Is I had a resume review session with some other candidate that they were interested in Twitch, the gaming company, and what we eventually got to was that person. I asked the question, why do you think you're great for this role? And that person gave a very interesting answer. They said, oh, I would love to be on the program management team at Twitch because outside of my day-to-day job, I actually run the Twitch gaming channel for my friend. And she's a Twitch gaming influencer for XYZ game. I forgot the game. It was pretty niche. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So you know the platform. So then we started talking about the platform. And then I asked her questions and she said, yeah, she grew it from 0 followers to 5,000 subscribers. And then that opened up questions like, how did you grow to 5,000 subscribers? What did you do? How did you engage with that community? What are your plans moving forward? And I'll say the answers were impressive enough where I was inclined to move forward to the next step at least. So it was very interesting. So I think that's what you can do with this career fair. You can use this short template to make yourself stand out. Okay, so I'll leave time for that. Let's leave time for any Q&A. You might have a lot of questions.
Thank you, Jason. That was amazing and such good information in such a short amount of time. I'm just like impressed. And this is so valuable, even for me, all the things that I've learned by working with students and working with individuals who are, changing their career or trying to figure out how to get to their, desired career or just figuring out at all. So thank you. We got some really great questions in the chat. Mia, I know, has been, kind of collecting some of those and seeing if there's any common questions. And I'm also happy to answer, but I want Jason to have this time. So Mia, do you want to, and then just stick around at the end for anyone who is available, because, I can tell you how to log in for just upcoming events and career fair and any other questions you might have regarding the Career Center part. But Mia, do you have any great questions for Jason right now?
Yeah, so thank you so much to everyone who messaged with a question. A lot of great questions. Some of them kind of touch on very similar things. So yeah, we can go ahead and get started. So Jason, we did get some questions about people asking, if I don't have much experience, how can I tailor my answer to fit the experiences they're looking for? And what happens if you're prompted with a situation or scenario that you may not have experienced in?
Yeah. So very relevant question with this cohort of audience, right? I think employers and interviewers will know based on your resume and the position being hired for how many years of experience you have, right? So I think there's a temper in that expectation. So, but the thing you want to focus on is what are your controllable inputs going into the resume or in the interview, right? And that's where at this stage, a lot of your side projects can come into play, or things you've done at USC through your education, right? Did you lead a certain group? Were you part of a certain affinity group? Did you take part in certain extracurricular activities? And how deep did you go? Because there's really 2 parts that a interviewer is looking at. It's your breadth of experience. So how wide is it, and how many, and how big is your scope of influence? Like how many stakeholders or people did you influence? And then there's the depth of your experience. How deep did you go? Would you categorize and title yourself as a domain expertise? So I think in this cohort, rely on your internship experience, rely on the school projects you did. If you are very proud of a specific school project and the accomplishment is impressive, you can add that to your resume. Don't shy away from it. Yeah. And then the second part, what was the second part of that question?
Yeah, the second question, kind of touching similarly, how do you go about answering a question if the employer is asking you about a situation or experience that you may not have had previous experience with?
Yeah, okay. So there's 2 ways to go about this. Number 1, be very well prepared. So you can probably find online the types of questions that you will likely get. They want to know the challenges that you had. They want to know how did you invent and simplify a process? They want to know how big did you think on a project? They want to know how did you work with challenging stakeholders? They want to know how did you work with very quick timelines? And they also want to know how do you deal with ambiguity? If your goal was very ambiguous, hey, just make the best that you can. Okay, well, that's not really a goal. You know, there's no metrics. How do you do that, right? So what I would do is you can pretty much guess the type of open-ended questions you're going to get. So I would write each one down and write your STAR method answer for each one. So you go into the interview being prepared, right? Now, the question is, the second half of that question is, what happens if they ask you a question that you don't have experience with? Ideally, you pull from something that has happened in your career, professionally, education-wise, internship-wise. If you don't, I recommend being upfront and candid and saying, you could say, you know, I don't have an exact experience that touches your question. However, I can talk about this experience. Would that be interesting? And you can ask it right back. Most of the time, the interviewer will say, yeah, tell me about that experience. Because they're not going to push something that you told them that you don't have experience with. It's better to be upfront. And if you don't know, it's better to say you don't know. Like, for example, one follow-up question might be, how much revenue did the company drive in Q3 of last year? If you don't know, it's better to say, I don't know. I can follow up with you afterwards. Don't lie. That's the last thing you want to do.
Thank you. All right. And then we also did receive some questions regarding the STAR method, especially implementing it on your resume, as you mentioned. So do you have any advice in using the STAR method in order to keep your resume concise and to the one-page recommendation?
Yes, that's probably the most common questions. So let me go back to this. Okay. So the pro of this bullet point is it's short, right? And you can have a lot, but it's meaningless if you have 20 of these and they're not that effective. It's better to have 5 or 6 of these that are most impactful. But what you can do, so here's a simple format. For the STAR, STAR, 1 sentence each. Okay, so that gets you to this essentially, right? If you want to cut it out, what I would work backwards from is the 2 most important in STAR is the A and the R, because the action is what you did. That's what people want to know. What did you do? What did you overcome? How did you think about overcoming this? What obstacles did you face? That's all the action, right? That's mostly what the interview is about. And then you do need R. One of the things that I look for when I quickly glance a first impression resume are the numbers. I want to see numbers, because if you're on a company that's data-driven, you want a data-driven candidate, right? So always include these 2. Usually what you can do is just combine this. So in this case, right, the most powerful aspect of this is probably this part, because that shows you're a top performer without saying you don't want to go in and say, I'm a top performer. No one's going to believe you, and no one knows what that means. You want to use these numbers to reflect that, right? So then you could just probably break up this into 1 sentence. Manage 300 customer support issues from engagement to resolution. That could be the 1 sentence. And then you follow up with these. Yeah, but that's what you want. What you want to use, remember, the resume is a controllable input. That's one of the few tools you have that you control in the whole interview experience and journey, right? So you want to make it as exciting and interesting as possible to the team.
Jason, I just wanted to add one thing to that fantastic answer. When I work with students, something that comes up for them is that they're not necessarily tailoring their resumes to each and every internship or job. So when you do that, you're only going to have, relevant experiences or, experiences and experience doesn't have to mean job or internship. Like you mentioned, like things that you're doing in your projects, classes, clubs, all those things. But that's something to keep in mind, is that you're going to tailor every single bullet point and tailor every single experience. So you'll probably end up with less can be more. You want to be specific and concise. I always say be specific and concise, which is a challenging thing to do. Thank you.
Yeah, +1 to that. And the other part of that question was the 1 pager. At this stage in your career, I do recommend keeping it to 1 page, because the interviewers will understand that you don't have 20 years of experience, right? And keeping it to 1 page, that's very effective, shows that you're an effective communicator in terms of writing, which is a critical skill, especially in remote work. At Amazon, writing is a critical skill, because that's how everything's communicated. But yeah, I'll take the next question. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. Another question is actually about this upcoming career fair. So do you have any suggestions on talking to a company that you don't really know well beforehand? And how would you recommend going about the research process in order to make your elevator pitch stand out?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two mental models you could approach the career fair, right? You can do a very tailored approach where you do a lot of research up front, and you, out of the 175 companies, you identify the top 20 that you're very excited to work for. And you go in with a very tailored messaging, right? Something like this. The other way you can do it is, if you're, I get it, you might be a little unsure in your career at that stage, what exactly you want to do. So you want to expose yourself to different things. You can take a high volume approach. In that case, you can broaden this to an industry level, but the more that you make it less tailored, the more exciting it's going to be to that recruiter. So my recommendation would be the more tailored niche approach, because you have to think of it from the career fair recruiter's perspective. They're also meeting a lot of students. So it's which of the students and resumes that they take away that they're going to remember. So how can you stand out in that front? And that's usually with a short message like this, followed up by a strong resume. That's how I would approach it.
Thank you. Someone also asked, a lot of us do have internship experience, so we're only exposed to a particular part of an entire project, and it's hard to quantify that actual impact when we're only part of the company for a short time. So how do you recommend tackling this issue when being asked about it during an interview?
Yeah, this is a common question. So there's a few parts. The ideal answer, and the one I like the best, is, because I've asked this to a lot of people, is when the person says, oh, my internship was only 3 or 4 months and the project continued on after that. However, I kept in touch with my manager and I asked them how it went, and then they told me XYZ, and that the product's actually going to launch in XYZ date. That's the most impactful, because it shows you followed up throughout, right? Or so that's the best one. The other one, if you don't have an answer and you don't have data, replace data with anecdotes. And actually, Ella did a very good job with this with her mock interview example, right? Because sometimes it's hard to get actual data when something hasn't launched or you're dealing with just human feedback. But if you could use signals like, oh, I received X number of emails saying what a good job, or I received X number of congratulations, or I won this award, or we did a survey and we achieved this % satisfaction. Or my manager said that was one of the most impressive internship presentations afterwards. Like, those are all anecdotal feedback. That's okay. It's not as effective as pure data, but it shows some creativity if you got anecdotal feedback combined with data. I'm trying to think what is another good example, because this one does come up a lot. I would say the best is to see if, or someone did tell me once, oh, the project that we presented during the internship ended, but I saw that 6 months later that they actually launched the product, and that the product received 5 stars on G2 rating or the Shopify App Store, etc. So yeah, all directional. You can use directional. But actually, I'll finish that. Now, at the end, what you can do is, what you also want to show is you want to be vocally self-critical with yourself. How can you have done it better? So I would preempt that and say your answer, and then you can say, looking back on my internship experience, what I would do differently the next time is I would employ XYZ. Maybe the week before you leave, send out a survey to all the stakeholders you worked with at your internship, asking to rate yourself. Then, and it's okay if someone came to me and said, I sent out a survey and I got 7 responses from the stakeholders, and 5 of them rated me 80% more, but 2 of them rated me 30% or less. So I actually had a one-on-one 15-minute call with each of those 2 people, and they gave me this feedback, and that's what I'm working on now. That's very powerful, because that shows growth.
Thank you. And then I know it is 12:30, but 12:50, but we do have some other questions. So you did mention being self-critical. So we did get some folks asking questions about how to answer behavioral questions. So someone asked, if I'm asked regarding like a time that I had missed the deadline, what is the correct way in approaching this question? Would I be able to use a reason of balancing multiple tasks at the same time so I wasn't able to finish? Can that be counted as an excuse rather than a rationale? And do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so definitely the first advice is always be honest with your answer, right? And so in this example, if you missed a deadline because of too many projects, what that indicates to the interviewer is, does this candidate know how to prioritize work or manage up to their manager to help identify what is a stack rank priority? Because this is pretty much something everyone's going to face. Everyone has too much work that's more than 24 hours a day, right? But you can't do all of it. So you have to have good time management, project management skills. So it's what a good answer to this is showing that, okay, you missed the deadline, but what did you learn from it? And the learning is, how did you prioritize the multiple tasks? And if you didn't, and that's why you missed the deadline, then how did you discuss it with your internship manager or manager on how you would have prioritized it? And the key thing here is the metrics that you use to prioritize it. What was it? Was it importance to the business based on revenue? Was it shipping out a product that the sales team needed, otherwise they couldn't go pitch the product? Was it working closely with the engineering team to hit a specific deadline because the CEO was presenting at a trade show? Like, what are the factors that you're using to prioritize it? I would take the person through their stack rank actually and say, looking back on this experience, what I will do the next time is, the moment I get this project is I'll come in with a checklist of these metrics and ask my manager to help me prioritize it then and there. So when the next one comes in, you do that same checklist, and then you're basically scoring it. You could do like a score of 1 to 10, 10 most important, right? And then let's say there's 5 metrics. So 50 is the highest score. And if you hit a 50, that means priority number 1. So then you can stack rank. Okay, this one's a 49. This one's a 37. So I'm going to prioritize this. That's how I would do it.
Thank you. And then one of the last few questions that we have, someone also asked, do you have any advice for individuals who may have a gap in their career experiences, but are interested in transitioning to a new role?
Yeah, the question, a gap is never a red flag per se, right? The question is, what did you do during the gap? That's the most important, because people take gap years or gap time periods for different reasons. So it's what is that experience? It's what's that reason? And then what did you learn from it that you can then take to bring to this new role? Because remember, during the interview, the reason for behavioral-based questions like the STAR, right? This piece is the interviewer wants to know, what did you do in the past? Because your past behavior is an indication for future success. So they want to know, how did you overcome things? And then how did you grow? So if you could show that you were able to overcome hard challenges and take away learnings from it proactively and quickly, then the thought is, okay, well, this person can thrive in our company because everything's crazy. People have too much work to do. Everything needed to be done yesterday, and things are ambiguous because we just need to grow, right? So yeah, it depends on the gap.
Jason.
Anything else?
Oh, Mia, do you want to take another question, Jason?
I could go over if you need to, and I can make it shorter too.
No, it's okay. This is super helpful. Mia, do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Maybe just one more question. Someone's asking, how many minutes do you have to answer one question? Is there a set time frame that you should be using to answer an interview question?
Yes. Okay. So this is the part of the piece with STAR. So you could tell the STAR is very structured, right? And then the other piece that we talked about was follow-up questions are a good sign. So what is not a good sign is if you just ramble for 10 minutes and don't give the interviewer a chance to follow up, because they might have 10 questions and you don't give them a chance. So that's not a good session, right? So what you want to do is, depending on your experience, but for this cohort, I would aim to answer a STAR question within 90 seconds. You could do it. I could probably say this in less than 20 seconds, and that's a STAR answer. Because remember, each of these is really 2 sentences, maybe 3 sentences, but everyone talks pretty much faster than they write, right? Although you read faster than, but yeah, I would say keep it concise to 90 seconds and hit on this main part so you open it up for follow-up questions. And the nice piece is when you talk about controllable inputs, your answer is a controllable input. You cannot control what questions you're going to ask, right? But you control how you answer it. So if you end it with something really interesting, you could say, like in this example, like if we take this apart, if I interviewed someone and they answered this way, my initial questions are, you are in the top 5% rating of your company. What would it take to make you number 1? What would you have to change? I'm very curious to what this person thinks and how they would do it, right? The other one is, how would you bring this satisfaction rate to 100%? What would you need to do? The other piece is for this question, because this one's interesting. Like if someone bookended it with this is so interesting. I would want to say, how are you preparing for this important meeting that you have coming up? What's the one takeaway you want the VP of sales to take away from this meeting? That's super interesting, but you control all that. So yeah. Anything else?
Sounds like that might be it for all the general questions and for a lot of thank you so much, Mia. Jason, I actually have one question for you, but I want to really encourage everyone who's still with us. We still have 104 participants. Thank you for staying the whole time. If you need more support, the Career Center is open Monday through Friday. You can make appointments for mock interviews. We have our mock interview night tomorrow. I put in the chat all the directions on how to access the event and sign up for the event. Career advisors, we have a lot of people that are here to support you on campus. So please come to drop in, make appointments. We're here for you. We want to answer your specific questions. And we're so grateful for Jason for spending this time with us. Thank you. Thank you. The one question I had for you, Jason, what questions can you ask as an interviewee that will give you a real accurate understanding of a company's expectations in that role and their culture? Because it seems like, when you ask questions, you don't always, you know what I mean? Like you don't always get the answer that you're like, how is it really going to be for me to be there? Will I fit in? Will I fit in, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the last, before I forget, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free, just say that you're affiliated with USC, etc. So it goes, that it's interesting. I think this piece will tell you a lot about how that team qualifies success and defines success. And then the expectations, I like this question because they're basically laying out the 30, 60-day, 90-day plan. Hey, you come on this team, this is the expectation for it. And the other piece is, you as an interviewee, don't be afraid to also ask your own follow-up questions. Like if someone says, you mentioned how do you measure success on your team? And someone says, it means that they get this job done, blah, blah, blah. And they don't give you a numeric or data-driven answer. You could say, what would that look like in terms of hitting a specific number benchmark, if there's one? So yeah, take the time, because this interview, it's a two-way interview. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Mia, Ella, Emily, for being amazing participants and co-hosting. And for all of you students, thank you for, just coming and showing up on your lunch hour. So I hope that you're also eating today. It's very important. If you have any other questions, come to drop in or, feel free to send me an email. And I hope to see you at mock interview night. We do have a question about mock interview night. You can come at any time between 6 to 8, but just remember they're short sessions. They're 10-minute, maybe max of 12-minute sessions with the alumni. So the more practice that you get, the more that you'll see them. And thanks for all your engagement, interesting questions. Come by and see us at Career Center. We're at the Student Union. We're in person and virtual. Thank you all so much. This was lovely.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks Jenny and team.
Yeah, Jason, you're great.
And
I just
fight
wanna
on,
pick your
everyone.
brain all the time.
Yeah, feel free. My communications are open. I'm a proud USC alum. My wife is a USC alum too, so we're a family of Trojans.
I love that. I'm going to stay on for anyone that has questions about tomorrow night or about career fair, anything Career Center related. I'm happy to stay on and answer any of those questions. Maybe you can unmute yourself one at a time. And if you can't for some reason, let me know. And Jason, feel free to like whatever you need to do if you want to stick around. But I'm sure you have a lot of other stuff happening in your world.
Yeah, I'll drop. There's some startup stuff, but thanks everyone. All right, bye.
I'm going to actually stop the recording so that you all can ask your other questions.